Good evening. Welcome to this month's Town Administrator's Report. I'm David Watts Jr., and with me is our Town Administrator, Steve Mayo. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, David. How are you today?
Surviving.
That's good.
Surviving. Looking forward to spring.
Yep. Well,
Getting tired of the intense cold.
yeah. Well, I'm getting tired of the roller coaster. Let's just make it nice and let's have it 40 to 50 for the next month without this.
Unfortunately, as we tape today, it looks like we have some roller coaster still coming.
We do, but at least
Our way.
At least it's going up.
But it's February, which means this is show one of 3 on the upcoming annual town meeting.
Yes.
And there's a change to that, back to what we used to do.
Yes, it was back to the future. Yes, the town council voted at the last meeting that we would return to the traditional Monday, Thursday, or Monday to when it's adjourned to, I should say, town meeting. So town meeting will be, first day will be Monday, May 9th at the Galvin, and it will be indoors at the Galvin. And it was a number of reasons. I think that the councilors did receive comments from some people that felt that it was harder on Saturdays. There was a little bit of a funkiness because it was, could be Mother's Day weekend, and there was some concerns about that. But they did vote to hold this town meeting anyway on Mondays and Thursdays, or Mondays whenever. And then to kind of relook at it for November, and maybe November would be a Saturday meeting. Again, the thought process there was there's less going on the weekends, and maybe it would be beneficial. So doesn't matter. We still got to go through the articles anyway. So
That's true. That's true.
And Article 1, which is the budget. So
And that's kind of where we're going to start, because we've received at least the preliminary cherry sheet estimates for the voters who are new to Wakefield and maybe new to Massachusetts. Let's just explain quickly what the cherry sheet is all about.
Absolutely. So every year, right around January, and there's a statutory date that this needs to come out in, and I think it's January 20th or 21st, or right around there. The governor presents the budget. His budget, which is called either the governor's budget or the House 1 budget. It's a starting point. And in that budget, it talks about all of the local aid and assessments that are going to go to each community. So we kind of anxiously await this as town managers, geez, what did I get for this and what did I get for that? And the key factors are unrestricted local aid, which is exactly what it is, unrestricted local aid. And the other key member of aid is Chapter 70, which is educational aid. And because Wakefield has consistently spent more than we would be required to on education, and rightly so, it all really just goes into one pot. So it's one pot of money. So this is something we look at every year, and is one of the few pieces of the income side on the budget that we know about on day one. We know what the tax levy is for the town. We know what we got in real estate and personal taxes the year before, and we can extrapolate usually 2.5% over that. And we also know we also have a feeling on state aid. So this came out, and the reason why it is called the cherry sheet, and it still is called the cherry sheet, is it used to actually come in the mail years ago, snail mail, and it was on red paper, cherry colored paper. It's called a cherry sheet. So now, of course, it's posted online, and I guess unless I put red paper in the machine to look at this, wouldn't happen. So anyways, this comes out, and this is a form that I have, complained about ad nauseum over many meetings about how Wakefield is not getting its fair share of Chapter 70 money.
We've touched on that.
We've touched on that a number of times, and I know that our state delegation is sick of hearing me, and I'm sure the public is sick of hearing about that from me too. I will say on this year, actually, we received a nice increase in Chapter 70 money of about $1 million, from $6.8 million to $7.8 million. And that is great. It is in line of what I had hoped to have gotten a couple of years ago. It is the second step of funding the educational bill that they put in a couple of years ago. So that did follow suit. So when I spoke to our state delegation after this came out, and I said, as far as I'm concerned, keep the budget, the House One budget. I'm very happy with it, where we came before. So I think they were probably surprised that that's the reaction they got from me, but that's it. So that's really good news. That's really actually very, very good news, and it's more than we had projected going into the budget season. However, I think our expenses are going to prove to be more than we thought as well as we come out of the COVID crisis. So it is a wash, but it's better to have this money. Let's put it that way. I think that that's really good. So the, and unrestricted local aid went up, from 3.7 million to a little over 3.8 million. That was frankly a little less than we thought, but that was the consensus revenue figure that the House and Senate and the governor agreed on. And I kind of understand why, because that number came out first, is because so much went into Chapter 70. So the bottom line is Wakefield is going to receive about $1 million more in aid than it did last year, which is great. But however, I always say the great thing about the cherry sheet is that page 1 is maybe where the receipts come in for the town. You got to turn it over to page 2 to see what is being taken away. And really no surprises there other than charter school tuition, sending tuition was up a little bit.
Okay.
But other than that, I'm pretty happy, frankly, with what happened last year. So that's good. That's good going into the budget season.
Well, and one of the items on page 2 is MBTA. And we've
Yes.
talked about that
Yeah.
quite a bit last year.
Yep.
With the changes to the routes and everything. And, we're looking at 612.5 thousand this coming fiscal year.
Well, it's actually 625. 612 was the year
Well,
before.
that's-
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Well, I have cherry sheet estimate, and then I have governor's budget proposal.
But I think that this is next year. At 625 is the correct figure to go with right now.
Oh, okay.
So that's, that's
That's up from last year?
That's up from last year, but again, I think we're going to hear a lot more about the MBTA. So I think for our public at home that probably doesn't, really, there's no reason why they should, be in tune to this. But what happens is each community that is serviced by either buses or commuter rails, in our situation it's both, are assessed from the state for some of those costs. And for Wakefield, it happens to be $625,000. It's not that we pay it; it's that we get some. We're given all of the money coming into the town would be X, and then from that they'll reduce. So it's not we pay it and we get it and pay it back. It's just reduced from what we get. So that's that's for the having the rails through the town, having the train service. Of course, it's having the bus routes in service. Of course, the riders still pay, but this, I guess, is there to help cover some of the other infrastructure costs.
Right. Any wear and tear and that sort of
Wear
thing.
and tear. And one thing we're really pushing for is, among other things, there's always the repairs of the tracks that we want and what have you, but we're also really in tune and pushing with the MBTA to have our North and Albion train station handicapped accessible. So that's something we've been pushing with the train station for years, with the MBTA for years. Multi-million-dollar project, but it should be on their capital list because, hey, it's not fair.
Well, and to be fair, Greenwood's not handicapped accessible either.
Right, but I would start with the North Ave because they have more riders, and
Sure,
that's the
sure.
one that is the one to probably start with.
Sure. And I know it's really early in the process, but where are we with town budget?
Well, we have been, we start really in I guess we start really thinking about it in October, maybe September after Labor Day. And for the individual departments. But we do have a forecast that is carried out through fiscal year 30, so it's 7 years out. So we do kind of have an idea where we're going to be. But in the town budget, we have heard a number of budgets totaling about 19 million of a total of 73 million. So these are some of the smaller departments, okay? We haven't heard of the schools, which are going to be around, 47 million. I hope the school committee probably doesn't like that number. It's probably lower than they want, but around 47 million.
Compared to what last year?
Compared to 45 and a half last year. So
Okay.
it is roughly a 4% increase that we're carrying. So. So we still have to hear fire, we still have to hear DPW. So there are some of the larger health insurance, which is a huge one as well, is coming forward. But the budgets for the most part have been coming in, right around in a 3% area that I would like, that we try to do, with a few caveats. And there always are. And one of which is the town council heard. Let's talk about the police budget. That budget is 6.7 million. Okay. Well worth every penny. We have such a top shelf police force. That's showing a bit of a bigger increase this year than we'd like over last year. But let's break that down and say, why is that an increase of it? Things are being returned. The 4th of July parade, for instance. 4th of July parade we haven't had for 2 years. That's about a $38,000 budget item. When you think about all the police detail work, we have people working that whole day, and a lot of that weekend,
Virtually everyone's on deck.
Virtually
Yeah.
everyone
Yeah,
is
yeah.
on deck in the police department that
Yeah.
day. No one can have a vacation day, actually, because that's a huge day for the town. So that's, putting that back in, it's small numbers when you think about a huge budget, but as a percentage-wise, that's something. Another thing that we're looking at in the police department budget is we did receive a grant from the state for body cameras, police to wear body cameras. And that grant was about $50,000, I believe. That just covers the cost of the cameras, cost of the hardware, okay? Now, we know a lot of data is going to come in that, and that needs to be stored. So we look to add to this budget to store that data in the cloud, for a number of reasons. A, we don't want to have our own people storing it, because that could be considered an issue, and there's also, technically, there's a lot to do. The cloud is much safer, and I think this is a great step forward for our community. We have such a well-trained, well-versed, excellent police department, from the chief down to the newest recruit. And in today's world of cell phones and this is going to be activated right in the beginnings. We're gonna see the entire issue that happened. Okay, so it's gonna be there. Whenever an officer pulls out their gun, it'll automatically go on. So it's really a very interesting dynamic, and I think that it's really going to help tell that whole story. And I think it'll be very positive. So that's an increase in the budget there. So that's a little bit more. So, things like that. We're also increasing the town's portion to cover the social worker component of the police department. I would say that, hey, we certainly over the years and certainly in the pandemic showed how critical that issue is. So things like that. And how effective. And exactly how effective. And really how much needed by the public. So that's been a great, that's going to be a little bit of an addition there. Library budget came in last night right at around 3%. Great. And it's fully funding the book, the materials and supplies, the book budget, to make sure we keep state certification. Was an issue not too long ago because of where we were fiscally. And we've picked away at that, so we're in great shape right now for that. So we're actually in, so we go with these budgets. I mean, I have a kind of a schedule, a 30-year schedule. I have a year schedule that I look at. And as some of these come in, they seem to be pretty much in line of what we had talked about at the tri-board meeting, we've talked about with Finance Committee, and we talk about certainly with the town council. The way budget process works is each department head reviews their budget. We certainly look for trends in areas that we should adjust up or down. We talk about personnel needs and keep those, we know there's a lot of requirements out there, but we try to find other ways to do it, either in collaboration with other communities or maybe contracting in certain instances so we don't have to pay the benefits. But sometimes we do add, and we see a few areas where we did add personnel. And then those go to, so I review those along with our very capable town accountant, Kevin Gill. And then we meet with liaisons to the Finance Committee so they can really do a deep dive into the budgets and really understand it. Then each line item of each budget gets presented to the town council, and they vote on, the budget going through it. And the Finance Committee has their comments at that meeting when the town council votes on it, before they vote on it, so they can hear their, and then we go back to the Finance Committee, so the entire Finance Committee can hear the entire budget. And so I think each budget is pretty well scrutinized at a number of steps along the way. And I think that system that we do, which I think is a little bit more thorough, not, it certainly goes through each line item, is a little bit more thorough than some other communities may or may not do. I think that's part and parcel why we are in pretty good shape. And we have a AAA bond rating because all of these things are looked at. There's a lot of vetting. And then, of course, the biggest vetting at all occurs at town meeting,
Right.
where the townspeople vote up or down, or sideways, I guess, on each budget, and we break it up at town meeting into areas. So it really is it's a lengthy process, but that's okay. I don't know if they pan on this, but this is my budget book. I have one of these for every year. I get made fun of for having all of this paper, but I find that this really works very well. I carry it with me like 24/7, it seems, during these months. And Thursday night, we'll be presenting another bunch to the town council, to the Finance Committee, because the town council heard them Monday, and we'll go through those as well. So it is interesting.
Now, a lot of people have been hearing in the news for the last couple of weeks about how significant inflation has been occurring since pretty much the end of last year, and especially since the beginning of this year. How much is that affecting the budget process for the town?
Well, it will in certain areas, and it will, for most of the salary positions are contractual. So, good, you take the good and the bad on those. So we don't know, that is less of an inflationary area. But particularly when you get into some of the materials and supplies area, particularly where you get into things like fuel for the buildings and gas and motor oil for the vehicles, the cost of electricity, all those things that are going up. We tend to look at a 5-year average on those because there will be peaks and valleys during the year. I am hoping, quite frankly, that some of this spike in inflation will maybe settle back down. Some economists are saying that. Certainly, if the Federal Reserve cuts some rates, that might, raises interest rate, that might cut inflation a little bit. So those are going to be some issues that we're really going to be looking at. And, if we have runaway inflation, and I'm not saying that's going to happen, we certainly have another bite of the apple of this in November. We could adjust. We also have a reserve fund where we put aside $400,000 for unforeseen circumstances. I certainly don't think inflation running away from July 1 is an unforeseen circumstance, but it is something that we have. So we do look at that. We try to look at a trend. We try to look at a 5-year cycle on a lot of those things, and averaging out like the cost of oil, cost of gasoline, what have you. The other thing is that as we are keeping up with our capital, which we have newer vehicles which use less fuel, and years ago when we had really old they were like burning everything, right? This is a little bit less.
Like the old Crown
Right.
Vics.
Yeah, exactly, like the old Crown Vics, although the police would say they love them. The other thing is that where it will have an effect, though, is in our capital, purchases. Usually budget item, Article number 2 at the town meeting is usually our capital plan. So we're looking to spend, another $2 million on capital, and that's everything from vehicles to
Building
building
repairs.
repairs, roofs, new
Yep.
roofs, and things like that. So we may look at that $2 million where we hoped to get, 10 vehicles and 10 roofs for the sake of argument. It might be 8 vehicles and 8 roofs because of the materials and supplies if those jacked up. So it could delay some things. But inflation will also come in some of the road repairs because, what is a lot of the road product made with? It's made with oil,
Right.
If oil goes up, that could mean that stretch of road is now a little bit more than it would have been before. And, I'm more concerned with some of these. We talk about budgeting and capital is even getting them. You can't get granite curbing. You can't get, we may order, 3 new vehicles and wait months and months to get them in because they're just not there.
Right.
So that
Same problem that consumers are having
same
with
problem,
getting new
exactly.
vehicles.
The same problem that
Sure.
consumers are having. I was talking to a gentleman the other day to keep on this trek that he used to have on his lot 200 vehicles, 200 new vehicles for sale. And maybe 60% would go, so he'd keep replenishing those, right? Now he has 100, so he's getting half the vehicles he had before. But good for his business is 95, 96, 97% of them are going right away. So I don't, it is an interesting, negotiating and going through all these things is a pretty interesting dynamic, I guess.
And, when you talk about petroleum and such, is the town looking at any point, I know the MGLD has through presenting their electric cars to people at different events, but is the town in general starting to look more at electrical municipal vehicles?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we will be presenting a fleet energy reduction plan on all of this coming forward. We actually already have a fleet plan looking to where we can replace vehicles with a electric vehicle. We will do so. There are some vehicles that the technology hasn't got there yet, specifically with your heavy machinery and with your police cars. But I think we're a year or two away of getting police cars that will be completely electric. So that's something that we're constantly looking at. And another couple of items that we're looking at on the energy side is solar. So we've outfitted some of our DPW structures. One is the garage, I guess, down on North Ave, not the working garage, but where the storage area is there. And we're looking at the water treatment plant across the street there. Those will be very much, I can't say 100% because that's never going to happen, not going to happen right now, but that solar power coming in is, we want to get to the point where, we're actually selling it back, like having enough of that building to sell back to help with others. And those are going to be, frankly, big considerations on the new and refurbished high school, which we're in today. They're looking at that. So, yes, we are looking at that very, very closely. With the goal that hopefully, the whole Wakefield, including the rest of the state, will be, I think the year's 2050, which seems like awfully far away, to be, completely carbon neutral. So we're looking at those things certainly are looking at more and more of that.
Well, I mean, we're certainly seeing it in some of the vehicles that are being made available. Ford now is starting to replace their pickup truck fleet with all electric. And, even to the point of performance cars, electric performance cars. But so it's an area that's moving probably much more quickly than anyone expected it would.
Right, absolutely, and I think that right now the upfront cost of some of those electric vehicles were much higher than an internal combustion engine one, an ICE one are. But that gap is shrinking, and certainly the maintenance and going on is shrinking because of the cost. Well, the cost of the fuel is shrinking. So those are all very positive things, and I think we're a step ahead of many communities where we have already adopted a fleet policy,
Right.
where we actually listed all of our vehicles and said, hey, when these come up, right, they need to be replaced with an electric vehicle. Not there yet with cruisers; they're still exempt. Not there yet with some of our, bigger dump trucks and things because the
Right.
technology hasn't caught up. But
Fire trucks.
fire trucks again.
Yep.
But your pickup trucks and those things, they're going to be. You're going to see more of that. And certainly our parking attendants, those are completely electric, those vehicles. So we are going in that direction.
Excellent. And what other areas, we still have 2 more shows to do
Yeah.
before we get to, but let's get a little preview of what we may have to talk about 4 weeks from now.
4 weeks from now, I think our biggest, we could have a very good discussion on health insurance. So health insurance has been a huge expense for many, many years for many, for many different communities and what have you. Now, a few years ago, Wakefield did make the important decision, the town council did, of joining the Group Insurance Commission, which is really where the state is getting their insurance. Before, we negotiated directly with Blue Cross Blue Shield, and frankly, Blue Cross Blue Shield, I can remember those days. They came with their budget numbers late. There was very little we could do to negotiate. It was like, hey guys, it's going to be 10% this year increase. It's going to be 12% this year. It's going to be 15%. We made the jump to the GIC, and we made the very important decision at that time to take the savings, or a portion of the savings, and actually fund our OPEB liability, which is other post-employment benefits, because like the town needs to fund its pension for the workers, it also needs to fund the fact that you will have retirees that will be available to get health insurance, and you've got to cover for. You have to fund that too. So we're one of the very few communities that are doing both pension funding and OPEB funding at the same time. A lot of communities are saying, I'm not going to worry about OPEB until we're all done with the pension funding. If that for Wakefield will be fully there 2036 or 2035. But we'd be way behind the 8 ball. So that the GIC is meeting on that, I think, the first week of March. So we're going to get some inkling of where the rates are, and then we're going to have an inkling of, we'll have open enrollment, and we'll try to figure out where does Wakefield fall in that. Because the GIC, you can join 3 or 4 different carriers within there. And sometimes you have, carrier A and carrier B, and, if I'm a consumer, I want my doctor, okay? Make sure I have my doctor, make sure I have the hospital I want to go to. We all do that, right? All right, carrier A has the same doctor, same hospital I want as carrier B. For some reason, carrier B is, $100 more a month than carrier A. So we have a great human resources staff and benefit staff that actually meets almost one-on-one with every town employee and says, hey, you could get the same insurance coverage, okay? You might have to manage it a little bit differently. We'll help you with that. But you're going to save money per month on your portion of the premium, and the town's going to save money. So that has to be factored in. But I was a little bit concerned with insurance this year because of are there lingering costs in the pandemic? What happened? And I held about a 5% increase in group insurance for next year, for the next fiscal 23. We're going to see how good I was. Soon. We're going to see how good I was, and then we'll come back, and you can ask me, how were you, Steve? And I'm going to say, I was 6%, I was 1% off.
And we may have more information on that when we pick up on this at the next show.
We'll definitely have it, yeah.
Super. So we'll pick up on preview part 2 in March, and in the meantime, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
See you next month.
Take care.